The arrogant tycoon actually started taking endless selfies on the plane, but the female scientist beside him looked completely disgusted. She despised such flashy behavior. Instead of backing off, the man confidently leaned in to strike up a conversation. When he realized the beauty paid him no attention, he pulled out a business magazine and pointed at his own picture to show off. Yet Fushun's display only made Rui look at him with even more disdain. To cover his embarrassment, Fushun lifted his camera and pretended to take pictures of the view outside. But in his heart, he was secretly plotting how to teach this woman, who made him lose face, a lesson. When the plane suddenly tilted, Fushun deliberately fell onto Rui. But as they argued, they had no idea that a severe life and death challenge was waiting for them ahead. At that moment, a violent blizzard erupted outside the window. The captain tried to pull the plane upward to break through the clouds, but he clearly underestimated the storm's power. The aircraft was gripped by an invisible giant hand and instantly lost control. Under the fierce impact of the turbulence, the captain was thrown out of the cockpit and plunged into the sky. Immediately after, the fuselage slammed into the icy cliffs of the mountain and then crashed straight into the frozen surface below. This was the film that countless people called the most visually stunning masterpiece upon release. Some said it showed the majesty of Antarctica to the fullest, while others believed it portrayed love in desperate circumstances in a deeply moving way. Fortunately, Fushun was lucky. Though his ears rang and his vision spun, his body was unharmed. When he rushed into the cabin to check, he found Natasha dead on the spot, while Rui was gravely injured, her leg trapped under a twisted door panel. Hearing Rui's tearful pleas for help, Fushun turned and ran without hesitation. The ice was cracking fast, the plane was sinking, and he wasn't willing to risk his life for a stranger. But just as Rui fell into despair, believing she would sink into the icy lake with the plane, Fushun actually turned back. Perhaps his conscience couldn't let him abandon someone on the brink of death. His return gave Rui a faint spark of hope, but half the fuselage now hung over a crevasse, and every second was a race against death. Without thinking, Fushun threw his full strength into pulling Rui free from the steel panel. The moment they staggered away from the wreckage, the plane plunged into the icy lake with a thunderous crash. Although they had narrowly escaped death, an even more terrifying survival challenge was just beginning on the Antarctic ice sheet, where temperatures were dozens of degrees below zero. Their phones had no signal. No one knew their exact location. It's important to know that 98% of Antarctica is covered by ice, with an average thickness of 2 kilometers. Here, any trace of human civilization seems incredibly small.
飞机上不是都有黑匣子吗？
海水平均深度在3000米以上，黑匣子的信号是发不出去的。
Fushun knew if they wanted to live, they had to find shelter fast. So he clenched his teeth and dragged the dead Natasha and the wounded Rui forward with great effort. But before long, another unknown danger quietly arrived. As a scientist, Rui knew how deadly this weather was. It was the most terrifying reaper on the ice, dropping temperatures to freezing in an instant. The howling wind carried shards of snow, instantly forming a white wall that surged forward like tens of thousands of wild horses breaking free, galloping without restraint. Wherever it passed, every trace of life was completely swallowed. Seeing the storm getting closer, Rui ignored the intense pain in her injured leg and struggled to crawl over, using her frozen stiff hands to help dig. Just as the wall of snow was about to hit, they crawled into a small snow cave barely big enough to hide in. No one knew how much time passed, but eventually the roaring faded, and when Fushun pushed the suitcase aside, the sky had cleared. Stubbornly, Fushun climbed out of the hole, unwilling to just sit and wait for death, determined to climb the mountain and try his luck, hoping the phone might catch a signal at higher ground. When he reached the top, he pulled out his phone immediately, but there was still no signal at all. Frustration overwhelmed him, and he roared into the empty sky. His wedding company was on the verge of going public. Everyone awaited the ringing of the bell, and he was about to become a billionaire at the height of his pride. This time he had brought the scientists all the way to Antarctica, originally to scout for an upcoming Antarctic wedding project, hoping to ride the wave of the company's public listing to launch a new venture. But instead, he was struck by this unexpected disaster. In anger, he threw his phone onto the snow, venting his despair. But in a moment of carelessness, he lost his balance and rolled straight down from the mountaintop. By accident, that fall revealed a glimmer of hope, because in the distance, a small cabin stood quietly on the snow. But Rui wasn't so lucky. A flock of vicious scavenger birds circled Natasha's body, tearing it apart, a sight that chilled her to the bone. She knew how dangerous these birds were. Their hooked beaks could rip off flesh in one strike. Terrified, she trembled and dared not make a sound. At that critical moment, Fushun returned. After a quick cleanup, he carried Rui on his back and set out on the path of survival. But the steep mountain walls made every step painfully difficult. Stubbornly, Fushun carried Rui again, trudging forward in the snow. He firmly believed that reaching the cabin would give Rui a chance to breathe and perhaps offer them a way to survive. But at that moment, a stone beneath his feet suddenly came loose, and they tumbled heavily into the snow, rolling all the way down the steep slope. Rui, already weak, fainted immediately after the fall, and yet, even greater trials still lay ahead. When Rui woke up from her coma, she found that Fushun had safely carried her to the cabin.
现在怎么办？
我的筋骨断了，需要把断掉的骨头接上。
接骨？这我哪行？
Fushun looked bewildered, but Rui knew clearly that if she delayed any longer, the muscles in her leg would suffer massive necrosis. Her internal organs would soon begin to fail, and in the end, she would only face death. At this point, Fushun had no room to retreat. He could only grit his teeth and follow Rui's instructions. However, without any anesthesia, every touch to the bone felt like being pierced by countless needles, causing such intense pain that Rui's internal organs seemed to convulse. In the end, she couldn't hold on, and soon fainted again. When she woke once more, she was shocked to find that Fushun had actually set her broken bone back in place. But before she could even breathe a sigh of relief, an awkward moment occurred. She shyly knocked on the wooden bedboard.
我想上厕所。
Since Rui couldn't get out of bed, Fushun sawed a hole in the bedboard and placed a metal basin beneath it. To spare her embarrassment, Fushun tactfully stepped outside to give her privacy. Looking at the endless frozen land before him, with even his breath turning into white mist, Fushun felt a deep helplessness in his heart. He truly did not know how much longer he could hold on. Perhaps heaven took pity on him. As he shivered outside in the cold, he discovered that the oil tank still held several hundred liters of diesel. This unexpected surprise instantly lifted his spirits. He rushed to the generator, grabbed the rope with a try-and-see attitude, and pulled hard. Astonishingly, the engine started successfully. At the same time, the lights inside the cabin suddenly lit up, and the stove slowly began to warm. Seeing this scene full of life, Rui could hardly believe her eyes. She never expected this flashy tycoon to show such steadiness and reliability. Later, they found many cans inside the cabin, and with her scientific experience, Rui quickly determined that these supplies were left behind by a Chinese Antarctic expedition team. The production dates on the cans stirred memories of years gone by, reminding them of the time when Chinese researchers rooted themselves in Antarctica. The supplies carrying the warmth of home became a protection that crossed through time and space. After Rui's careful analysis, she finally had a conclusion. But she only knew the approximate distance, not the exact direction. Fushun didn't care, but Rui could not be optimistic. She knew the diesel would only last 75 days, and they had to find the Aurora station within that time. Moreover, in 2 months, this place would shift from polar day to polar night. Temperatures would plunge, and without enough diesel to generate heat, they would still freeze to death.
那是在75天之内找到，我不相信找不到。
Fushun firmly believed that with his strength, he could reach the goal within the deadline. But he didn't know that the dangers outside were far more terrifying than he imagined. After packing his luggage, Fushun eagerly set out on the journey. But his impulsive nature left Rui, who was waiting in the cabin, with a constant sense of unease. Looking at the boundless white snow stretching endlessly before him, Fushun also felt a wave of confusion. He deliberately stamped neat footprints in the snow, as if trying to press down the fear of the unknown. Though exhaustion returned again and again, he always found ways to ease himself, sometimes chatting casually with a seal, sometimes imitating a penguin's waddling steps. Unconsciously, he forgot his mission and simply immersed himself in the joy of sharing space with the creatures of ice and snow. But while relieving himself in the snow, an iceberg beside him suddenly collapsed without warning. The deafening roar terrified him to the core. Fushun had no time to pull up his pants. He just ran instinctively with all his strength. Fortunately, the shockwave threw him beneath a boulder, allowing him to narrowly escape death. When he returned to the cabin, he boasted excitedly to Rui about his daring escape. Rui, gazing at the swirling snow outside the window, feared that going out again would only be more dangerous, so she suggested he rest for a day.
如果2天你还没能回来，那我也只能自己解决了。
Though Fushun acted tough, in his heart he knew that if something happened to him, Rui with her injured leg would not last long. In order to find the Aurora station before the diesel was gone, and so that they both could survive in this desperate land, Fushun set out again with burning determination the very next day. But beneath the fresh snow covering the ice, traps awaited that were even harder to predict than ice collapses. At every stage of his journey, Fushun paused to carefully record details in his notebook. He believed these notes might be the key to finding the Aurora station. Days passed in tense searching, and with his persistence, the search area gradually shrank. Yet just as they began to celebrate that survival was within sight, danger quietly approached. At night, Fushun lay starving and unable to sleep, so he curiously asked Rui about the origin of the aurora. Rui explained, "It comes from high above the Earth at over 100 kilometers, where the solar wind's high-energy electrons collide with molecules in the atmosphere, and when the excited molecules return to their normal state, they emit light, that is the aurora." In popular culture, the aurora has many romantic names, but from a scientific perspective, it is poetry written by the Earth's atmosphere to the universe. Just like their encounter at this moment, where chance concealed a wondrous inevitability. Looking at Rui's pale face, Fushun decided to catch some fish to help her regain strength. With his fishing experience, it didn't take long before he hooked an Antarctic ice fish with ease. But as he hummed a tune on the way back, a tearing crack suddenly exploded beneath him, and in the next moment the ground gave way, dropping him into a bottomless, icy abyss. The violent impact knocked him unconscious at once. When Fushun awoke from his coma, his first instinct was to struggle for an exit, but no matter how he walked, he always circled back to the same spot. Surrounded by endless darkness and bitter cold, Fushun felt despair, as if he had fallen into a bottomless pit. He was trapped for 3 days and 3 nights. Meanwhile, Rui knew in her heart that Fushun must have met with disaster. Helplessness flooded her like a tide, and for the first time, she felt unprecedented fear. Outside, the raging wind roared like a beast, shaking the cabin violently and tearing the wires apart. The indoor temperature dropped to freezing in an instant, and finally Rui had no choice but to endure the searing pain in her leg, dragging herself outside to try to start the generator. But after several pulls, the engine made no response. When she gritted her teeth and pulled one more time, the start rope snapped, and with it broke the last thread of hope in her heart. She looked up at this pure yet cruel world, and for the first time, a thought of ending everything rose inside her. Her eyes fell slowly on the empty can beside her, and with no more struggle in her gaze, she chose to bring everything to an end. But on the other side, Fushun did not bow to death. He groped in the darkness for a long time and finally found a narrow crack in the ice. With the faint glow of his lighter, he tried to smash a way out through the thick ice. But the ice that had condensed for tens of thousands of years was as solid as a wall of steel, not moving at all. Still, he dared not pause. He firmly believed that Rui was waiting for him in the cabin, and Fushun did not want her to wait in despair. With this faith, he unleashed incredible strength and at last managed to break through the frozen barrier. He did not dare waste a moment and rushed back toward the cabin in panic. But when he found Rui no longer inside, his heart sank with a wave of terror. He hurried outside, only to discover Rui barely clinging to life. Seeing the blood on her wrist, Fushun quickly pressed his ear to her chest. Thankfully, she was only unconscious from cold and weakness. Fushun pulled Rui tightly into his arms, filled with guilt and fear, but also relief at surviving such a test. After this life and death ordeal, their two hearts seemed bound tightly by invisible threads, growing ever closer together. Fushun carefully cooked the fish soup he had risked his life for, but Rui had no appetite at all. The suffocating despair of the past days had drained her completely. But when Fushun spoke of how he had fallen into the abyss and survived by sheer will, battling death at every step, Rui suddenly realized that her helplessness in bed was nothing compared to his brutal fight against mortality. Without resting long, Fushun prepared to set out again, but seeing Rui still unable to regain her strength, his heart ached with worry. Gritting his teeth, Fushun marched through the snow, the icy wind slashing his cheeks like knives. Step by step, he climbed ridges and searched stubbornly for the Aurora station. Yet beneath the seemingly calm snowfield, hidden dangers were silently watching. As he stared ahead, not daring to relax, his eyes suddenly burned as if seared by hot iron. The pain struck without warning. He grabbed snow to press against them, hoping for relief, but the pain only spread like wildfire, and within moments his vision blurred completely. He could only rely on his fading sense of direction to inch forward. But though the cabin was close, darkness rose like a wall. leaving him unable to tell where to go. Fear soaked through him like icy water, and he roared Rui's name in despair. Hearing Fushun's desperate cries outside, Rui's heart clenched, and ignoring the stabbing pain in her leg, she rolled off the bed and crawled to the door. Rui's response was like a sudden light in the dark night, piercing through the chaos before Fushun's eyes. He stumbled toward her. Rui pulled him into her arms, and at that instant Fushun broke down in sobs. He realized that, without his sight, finding the Aurora station was nothing but a dream. Fortunately, it was only snow blindness, caused by the long reflection of light on the snow, and after a few days of rest it would heal. Relieved at last, Fushun rested his head on Rui's lap and fell into a deep sleep. During his recovery, Fushun still cared attentively for Rui. Perhaps it was his unyielding spirit that deeply moved her, for Rui decided to respond with her own actions. She gently trimmed Fushun's beard, the intimate gesture like a beam of sunlight, quietly drawing them closer. Fushun slowly brushed Rui's hair aside and could not resist leaning in to kiss her. To keep him from suffering snow blindness again, Rui even made him a special eye cover, and with it the dazzling light of the snow no longer hurt his eyes. But the food in the cabin was nearly gone, and Fushun knew he had to catch more fish. When he reached the doorway, he stopped. Without his old confidence, he feared that if something happened again, what would become of Rui? Rui's words of promise became a tonic for his heart, filling him with strength and warmth. With that faith, even the harsh weather no longer scared him. He brushed away the snow on the ice, lay down on his stomach, and gazed quietly at the life surging beneath the frozen surface. Then, out of nowhere, a massive whale swam past, and before he could react, the ice beneath him split wide open. Fushun had no time to dodge and plunged into the dark sea below. He thrashed upward, but could not find an opening through the frozen surface. He struck the ice with all his strength, but it was hard as stone, unbreakable. Exhaustion dragged at him, and his body began to sink. At that desperate moment, a group of penguins darted past him, swiftly swimming toward the crack in the ice. At that moment, Fushun seemed to see the dawn of survival, and with the last of his strength, he swam upward after the penguins. At last, he climbed back onto the ice, but his soaked clothes quickly froze solid in the dozens of degrees below zero. The bitter wind cut across his skin like blades, as if it wanted to shatter both his body and his will. But on the edge of despair and pain, the image of Rui became his only support. Dragging his stiff legs, he moved with heavy but determined steps, inch by inch. In the cutting wind, clinging to his longing for Rui, he finally returned to the cabin before the last of his strength gave out. But the moment he stepped inside, he collapsed unconscious. Seeing his frozen state, Rui didn't dare waste a single second, frantically stripping away all his restraints. Then she unhesitatingly shed her own clothes, warming the frozen Fushun with her body. In that moment, she had only one thought: Fushun must not die. The next morning, when Fushun opened his eyes and saw Rui lying beside him, his heart filled with an indescribable happiness. He felt that all the suffering and struggles of yesterday had gained a heavy meaning at this moment. As the days passed, Rui's injured leg slowly healed, and Fushun pushed her on a sled so they could witness the grandeur of Antarctica together. In those days, they almost forgot their desperate situation, savoring every beautiful moment, and their bond grew deeper without them realizing. They both understood that their love had already sunk deep into their bones. Yet beneath the calm, danger was quietly gathering. In just over 10 days, polar day would give way to polar night. Temperatures would plunge, and their food was already running out. Fushun constantly worried about these things, but he didn't expect an even greater misfortune to arrive. One day, blood suddenly trickled from Rui's nose. She hastily wiped it away with her hand, but the crimson stain could not hide her panic. She forced a smile at Fushun, but he knew this was not the first time. Rui had been hiding it from him. Long-term lack of vitamins had weakened her body, and now it had developed into sepsis. Without immediate nutritional supplements, her condition would only worsen, and soon even her teeth might begin to fall out. But misfortune never comes alone. The generator they depended on stopped completely when the fuel ran out. Cold and despair instantly wrapped around them, and Rui no longer wanted to burden Fushun. She now clearly understood. Without her dragging him down, Fushun's chances of survival alone would be greater. Fushun realized what Rui meant, and choking back tears, he made a decision that shook her to the core. He looked at her, his voice trembling but firm.
你愿意在这个世界的尽头，接受我富春做你合法的丈夫吗？
Marriage, at its essence, is humanity's ancient contract against loneliness, and in this frozen land stripped of worldly noise, that promise felt even more pure. Then Fushun gently slid a ring, symbolizing love, onto Ruyi's finger. Ruyi was completely moved by this devotion, sobbing as she whispered broken words.
我不愿意，我要你好好活下去。
They clung tightly to each other, crying uncontrollably. Fushun could not imagine a life without Ruyi, and Ruyi did not want him to sink deeper into despair because of her. In their tears lay both helplessness at their dire reality and the deep, unbreakable attachment they had for each other. After the fuel ran out, they could only tear apart the furniture and burn it for warmth. When Fushun prepared to set out again, Ruyi handed him a hand-drawn Antarctic survival manual. From then on, every time Fushun ventured out to search, it was like gambling with death. He pushed himself to the limit, covering every stretch of snow. But there was never a clue about the Aurora station, and a despair that cut to the bone filled him. He began to think of giving up, no longer resisting such a cruel fate. He dug a large pit on the mountain, carried the frail Ruyi on his back to this place, and in his heart arose the thought of resting there forever with his beloved. But under Ruyi's desperate pleas, Fushun decided to fight one last battle, holding on to a final shred of hope as he set out on a do-or-die search. Across the swirling snow, they gazed at each other silently without dramatic words, only tears glistening in their eyes. Both of them knew this might be their final farewell. Yet fate seemed determined to mock them. Without warning, a blizzard roared in, the storm carrying snow like countless sharp blades, mercilessly devouring everything in sight, and along with it, Fushun's last hope was swallowed too. Fushun roared in despair, pouring out his rage and unwillingness, but no matter how he fought, his strength could not resist nature's fury, and he collapsed powerless into the freezing snow. No one knew how long had passed, but at last the sky calmed and silence returned. At that moment, a penguin gently roused him from unconsciousness. He lifted his eyes with effort, and in the direction where the penguin waddled forward, he saw a clear signpost standing in the snow, like a ray of light piercing despair. Summoning all his strength, he crawled to confirm, and to his shock, the Aurora station he had sought so long suddenly appeared before him. In that instant, joy surged through his body like an electric current, so intense he nearly fainted from this unexpected hope. Staggering, he reached the Aurora station, his throat rasping with hoarse cries. But in the empty base, only silence answered him. Exhausted, he helplessly picked up a nearby stone and struck the fuel drum beside him with all his might. Each blow carried a fragile hope, praying it would draw the attention of rescuers. The pounding echoed through the silence as if piercing the clouds and reaching the distant sky. Just as despair closed in, he suddenly saw a team in work uniforms running toward him. At that moment, he knew he was saved. Fushun wasted not a second, immediately leading the rescue team back toward the cabin. Even as the snow vehicle raced at top speed, his face held no joy, for he did not know if the starving, freezing Ruyi could endure the long wait. This worry filled him with a suffocating fear. But just before they reached the cabin, the driver slammed the brakes. Fushun leaned forward, only to see an avalanche roaring down like a monstrous beast, millions of tons of snow cascading from the peak, and their wooden cabin lay directly beneath the white torrent. The rescue team turned at once, fleeing desperately. Watching the cabin swallowed completely by the avalanche, Fushun felt a despair, as if plunged into an icy abyss. He had struggled so hard to reach the moment of victory, yet never expected fate to use such a cruel way to tear the woman he loved from his life. Faced with sudden destruction, Fushun lost all reason, and he only wanted to leap into the snow to search for Rui's figure. Fortunately, the rescue team pulled him back with force. His cries were filled with unbearable pain, unable to accept that their love might end in such a merciless way. Polar night arrived as promised, the cold, pierced bone like countless needles, while the aurora danced brilliantly in the sky. Fushun took out the survival notes Ruyi had given him, reading the warnings of danger and the coping methods she had written for him, every line filled with unending love and care. He could no longer hold back and broke into uncontrollable sobs, but in the moment when his vision was blurred by tears, he suddenly thought of something. He wiped nothing away, jumped onto a snowmobile, and sped toward the snow pit in desperation. Racing forward, his heart burned with hope that Ruyi was indeed hiding there, but also fear that the long, cold night had already claimed her. At the steep cliff where the snowmobile could go no further, Fuchun leapt off without hesitation, forcing his legs to run, trying to chase away the shadow of dread. Here the film ends. In the final moments, the mystery of Rui's fate lingers like mist, haunting everyone who leaves the theater. Some say sepsis had already drained her life, and in the deadly cold, she could never have survived. Others fix on that fleeting shot of her eyes opening, believing it was not reality but only Fuchun's obsession, a hallucination born of despair. Still others choose to believe that the last image of them gazing at the stars was their dream of future happiness. The director deliberately left such an open ending, like handing us a pen without a standard answer, inviting each viewer to write Rui's destiny anew. This unique narrative style leaves behind a trace of mystery, while urging us to reflect on the weight of life itself. If we lose reverence for life, if we lose hope in living, what meaning is left in this journey through the world? Thus, this film, while revealing the majesty and cruelty of Antarctica, reminds us, even in frozen despair, the light within must never be extinguished. Every breath is worth treasuring, every spark of hope worth clinging to. It is this persistence for life that allows ordinary existence to shine brighter than the aurora of the Antarctic sky. To capture the truest vision of Antarctica, the crew ventured deep into the icy continent itself, with strong support from the Great Wall Station. On November 1st, 2015, the crew began this polar journey, and by November 28th, they finally completed it. Enduring cold that could crack camera lenses and winds that could rip tents apart, they filmed glaciers, auroras, and endless snowfields, carving a visual experience that struck straight into the soul. They not only captured the breathtaking magnificence of Antarctica with their cameras, but also paid tribute to the indomitable spirit of humanity in the face of nature's extremes.